The Greek War of Independence, also known as the Greek Revolution, was a successful war of independence waged by the Greek revolutionaries between 1821 and 1832 against the Ottoman Empire. The Greeks were assisted by the Russian Empire, Great Britain, France, and several other European powers, while the Ottomans were aided by their vassals, the Eyalet of Egypt, and partly by the Beylik of Tunis. Even several decades before the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire in 1453, most of Greece had come under Ottoman rule. During this time, there were several revolt attempts by Greeks to gain independence from Ottoman control. In 1814, a secret organization called the Philokiateria was founded with the aim of liberating Greece. The Philokiateria planned to launch revolts in the Peloponnese, the Danubian principalities, and in Constantinople, and its surrounding areas. The first of these revolts began on 6 March 1821 in the Danubian principalities, but was soon put down by the Ottomans. The events in the north urged the Greeks in the Peloponnese into action, and on 17 March 1821, the Maniots declared war on the Ottomans. This declaration was the start of a spring of revolutionary actions from other controlled states against the Ottoman Empire. By the end of the month, the Peloponnese was in open revolt against the Turks, and by October 1821, the Greeks under Theodoros Vryzakis had captured Tripolitsa. The Peloponnesian Revolt was quickly followed by revolts in Crete, Macedonia, and central Greece, which would soon be suppressed. Meanwhile, the makeshift Greek navy was achieving success against the Ottoman navy in the Aegean Sea and prevented Ottoman reinforcements from arriving by sea. Tensions soon developed among different Greek factions, leading to 2 consecutive civil wars. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Sultan negotiated with Mehmet Ali of Egypt, who agreed to send his son Ibrahim Pasha to Greece with an army to suppress the revolt in return for territorial gain. Ibrahim landed in the Peloponnese in February 1825 and had immediate success. By the end of 1825, most of the Peloponnese was under Egyptian control, and the city of Missolonghi, put under siege by the Turks since April 1825, fell in April 1826. Although Ibrahim was defeated in Mani, he had succeeded in suppressing most of the revolt in the Peloponnese, and Athens had been retaken. Following years of negotiation, 3 great powers, Russia, Britain and France, decided to intervene in the conflict, and each nation sent a navy to Greece. Following news that combined Ottoman-Egyptian fleets were going to attack the Greek island of Hydra, the Allied fleet intercepted the Ottoman-Egyptian fleet at Navarino. The battle began after a tense week-long standoff, ending in the destruction of the Ottoman-Egyptian fleet. With the help of a French expeditionary force, the Greeks drove the Turks out of the Peloponnese and proceeded to the captured part of central Greece by 1828. As a result of years of negotiation, Greece was finally recognized as an independent nation in May 1832. The revolution is celebrated by the modern Greek state as a national day on the 25th of March. Background: Ottoman rule. The fall of Constantinople on the 29th of May 1453 and the subsequent fall of the successor states of the Byzantine Empire marked the end of Byzantine sovereignty. After that, the Ottoman Empire ruled the Balkans and Anatolia, with some exceptions. Orthodox Christians were granted some political rights under Ottoman rule, but they were considered inferior subjects. The majority of Greeks were called Raya by the Turks, a name that referred to the large mass of non-Muslim subjects in the Ottoman ruling class. Meanwhile, Greek intellectuals and humanists, who had migrated west before or during the Ottoman invasions, such as Demetrius Chalkokandila and Leonidas Philareis, began to call for the liberation of their homeland. Demetrius Chalkokandila called on Venice and all of the Latins to aid the Greeks against the abominable, monstrous, and impious barbarian Turks. However, Greece was to remain under Ottoman rule for several more centuries. The Greek Revolution was not an isolated event. Numerous failed attempts at regaining independence took place throughout the history of the Ottoman era. Throughout the 17th century there was great resistance to the Ottomans in the Morea and elsewhere, as evidenced by revolts led by Dionysius the philosopher. After the Mauryan War, the Peloponnese came under Venetian rule for 30 years, and remained in turmoil from then on and throughout the 17th century. As the band of Klefts multiplied, the first great uprising was the Russian-sponsored Orlov Revolt of the 1770s, which was crushed by the Ottomans after having limited success. After the crushing of the uprising, Muslim Albanians ravaged many regions in mainland Greece. However, the Maniots continually resisted Ottoman rule, and defeated several Ottoman incursions into their region, the most famous of which was the invasion of 1770. During the Second Russo-Turkish War, the Greek community of Trieste financed a small fleet under Lambros Katsanich, which was a nuisance for the Ottoman navy. During the war, Klefts and Armatollois rose once again. At the same time, a number of Greeks enjoyed a privileged position in the Ottoman state as members of the Ottoman bureaucracy. Greeks controlled the affairs of the Orthodox Church through the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, as the higher clergy of the Orthodox Church was mostly of Greek origin. Thus, as a result of the Ottoman millet system, the predominantly Greek hierarchy of the Patriarchate enjoyed control over the empire's Orthodox subjects. The Greek Orthodox Church played a pivotal role in the preservation of national identity, the development of Greek society and the resurgence of Greek nationalism. From the 18th century and onwards, members of prominent Greek families in Constantinople, known as Phanariots, gained considerable control over Ottoman foreign policy and eventually over the bureaucracy as a whole. Klefts and Armatollois in times of militarily weak central authority. The Balkan countryside became infested by groups of bandits that struck at Muslims and Christians alike, called Klefts in Greece, the equivalent of the Hajduks. Defying Ottoman rule, the Klefts were highly admired and held a significant place in popular law. Responding to the Klefts' attacks, the Ottomans recruited the ablest amongst these groups, contracting Christian militias, known as Armatollois, to secure endangered areas, especially mountain passes. The area under their control was called an Armatolok, the oldest known being established in Agrafar during the reign of Murad II. The distinction between Klefts and Armatollois was not clear, as the latter would often turn into Klefts to extort more benefits from the authorities, while, conversely, another Kleft group would be appointed to the Armatolok to confront their predecessors. Nevertheless, Klefts and Armatollois formed a provincial elite, though not a social class, whose members would muster under a common goal. As the Armatollois' position gradually turned into a hereditary one, some captains took care of their Armatolok as their personal property. A great deal of power was placed in their hands and they integrated in the network of clientelist relationships that formed the Ottoman administration. Some managed to establish exclusive control in their Armatolok, forcing the Porte to try repeatedly, though unsuccessfully, to eliminate them. By the time of the War of Independence, powerful Armatollois could be traced in Rumeli, Thessaly, Epirus and southern Macedonia, to the revolutionary leader and writer Yanis Makriyanis. Klefts and Armatollois, being the only available major military force on the side of the Greeks, played such a crucial role in the Greek Revolution that he referred to them as the yeast of liberty, enlightenment and the Greek national movement due to economic developments taking place both within and outside the Ottoman Empire. The 18th century witnessed the ascent of two merchant groups to prosperity. Greek sailors of several Aegean islands, such as Hydra and Andros, became affluent maritime merchants, and Rumeli muleteers of Slav, Greek and predominantly Vlach origins changed from muleteers and peddlers to independent merchants and bankers after the Treaty of Passarowitz. As commerce expanded in the Balkans, Greek became the area's lingua franca, and continental merchants homogenized through a process of assimilation to the Greek high culture. By the end of the century, they generated the wealth necessary to found schools, libraries and pay for young Greeks to study at the universities of Western Europe. It was there that they came into contact with the radical ideas of the European Enlightenment, the French Revolution and Romantic nationalism. Educated and influential members of the large Greek diaspora, such as Adamantios Korais and Anthimos Gazis, tried to transmit these ideas back to the Greeks, with the double aim of raising their educational level and simultaneously strengthening their national identity. This was achieved through the dissemination of books, pamphlets and other writings in Greek, in a process that has been described as the modern Greek Enlightenment. In the 18th and 19th century, as revolutionary nationalism grew across Europe, including the Balkans, the Ottoman Empire's power declined and Greek nationalism began to assert itself. The most influential of the Greek writers and intellectuals was Theodoros Vryzakis. Deeply influenced by the French Revolution, Vryzakis was the first who conceived and organized a comprehensive national movement aiming at the liberation of all Balkan nations, including the Turks of the region, and the creation of a Balkan Republic. Arrested by Austrian officials in Trieste in 1797, he was handed over to Ottoman officials and transported to Belgrade along with his co-conspirators. All of them were strangled to death and the bodies were dumped in the Danube. In June 1798, Vryzakis' death ultimately fanned the flames of Greek nationalism. His nationalist poem, the Theodoros, was translated into a number of Western European and later Balkan languages and served as a rallying cry for Greeks against Ottoman rule. Another influential Greek writer and intellectual was Adamantios Korais, who witnessed the French Revolution. Korais' primary intellectual inspiration was from the Enlightenment, and he borrowed ideas from Thomas Hobbes, John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. When Korais was a young adult, he moved to Paris to continue his studies. He eventually graduated from the Montpellier School of Medicine and spent the remainder of his life in Paris. He would often have political and philosophical debates with Thomas Jefferson. While in Paris, he was a witness to the French Revolution and saw the democracy that came out of it. He spent a lot of his time convincing wealthy Greeks to build schools and libraries to further the education of Greeks. Korais' ultimate goal was a democratic Greece, much like the Golden Age of Pericles, but he died before the end of the revolution. The Greek cause began to draw support not only from the large Greek merchant diaspora in both Western Europe and Russia, but also from Western European Philhellenes. This Greek movement for independence was not only the first movement of national character in Eastern Europe, but also the first one in a non-Christian environment, like the Ottoman Empire. Philocteria Pharios' martyrdom was to inspire three young Greek merchants, Nikolaos Skoufas, Emmanuel Xanthos, and Athanasios Zarkarlov. Influenced by the Italian Carbonari and profiting from their own experience as members of Freemasonic organizations, they founded in 1814 the secret Philocteria in Odessa, an important center of the Greek mercantile diaspora. With the support of wealthy Greek exile communities in Britain and the United States, and with the aid of sympathizers in Western Europe, they planned the rebellion. The society's basic objective was a revival of the Byzantine Empire, with Constantinople as the capital, not the formation of a national state. In early 1820, Ioannis Kapodistrias, an official from the Ionian Islands who had become the joint foreign minister of Tsar Alexander I, was approached by the society in order to be named leader but declined the offer. The Philokoi then turned to Alexander Ypsilantis, a Phanariot serving in the Russian army as general and adjutant to Alexander, who accepted. The Philokiateria expanded rapidly and was soon able to recruit members in all areas of the Greek world and among all elements of the Greek society. In 1821, the Ottoman Empire mainly faced war against Persia and more particularly the revolt by Ali Pasha in Epirus, which had forced the Vali of the Morea, Hursid Pasha, and other local pashas to leave their provinces and campaign against the rebel force. At the same time, the great powers, allied in their concert of Europe in opposition to revolutions in the aftermath of Napoleon I of France, were preoccupied with revolts in Italy and Spain. It was in this context that the Greeks judged the time ripe for their own revolt. The plan originally involved uprisings in 3 places: the Peloponnese, the Danubian Principalities and Constantinople. Philhellenism. Because of the Greek origin of so much of the West's classical heritage, there was tremendous sympathy for the Greek cause throughout Europe. Many wealthy Americans and Western European aristocrats, such as the renowned poet Lord Byron and later the physician Samuel Howe, took up arms to join the Greek revolutionaries. Many more also financed the revolution. The London Philhellenic Committee helped insurgent Greece to float 2 loans in 1824 and 1825. The Scottish historian and Philhellene Thomas Gordon took part in the revolutionary struggle and later wrote the first histories of the Greek Revolution in English. According to Albert Boehmer, the Philhellenes willingly overlooked many of the contradictory stories about Greek atrocities, because they had nowhere else to deposit their libertarian impulses. In Europe, the Greek revolt aroused widespread sympathy among the public, although at first it was met with lukewarm and negative reception from the great powers. Some historians argue that Ottoman atrocities were given wide coverage in Europe, while Christian atrocities tended to be suppressed or played down. The Ottoman massacres at Chios in 1822 inspired Eugene Delacroix's famous painting Massacre of Chios. Other Philhellenic works by Delacroix were inspired by various Byron poems. Byron, the most celebrated Philhellene of all, lent his name, prestige and wealth to the cause. Byron spent time in Albania and Greece, organizing funds and supplies, but died from fever at Missolonghi in 1824. Byron's death helped to create an even stronger European sympathy for the Greek cause. His poetry, along with Delacroix's art, helped arouse European public opinion in favor of the Greek revolutionaries to the point of no return, and led Western powers to intervene directly. Philhellenism made a notable contribution to Romanticism, enabling the younger generation of artistic and literary intellectuals to expand the classical repertoire by treating modern Greek history as an extension of ancient history. The idea of a regeneration of the spirit of ancient Greece permeated the rhetoric of the Greek cause's supporters. Classicists and Romantics of that period envisioned the casting out of the Turks as the prelude to the revival of the Golden Age.